podcast where we do the work so you don't have to. Fellas, a momentous occasion is happening today. We are going live on YouTube, hopefully, as long as it's working for the very first time ever. Hopefully, we can get some people in the chat to verify whether that is happening or not, but we're giving it our best shot, hoping it works out for us. No fear, no flinch, fellas. We're going to make this happen. Um, there's 3 weeks left in the season, fellas. I like in the regular season. Like I know we got conference championships and all that. But I would call this the home stretch. Um, I think I might be right in saying that. I mean, we are down to brass tacks here. These are the biggest games that we're going to get. I feel like this is a little bit of like a sleeper week, kind of. A couple good matchups, but it's almost like to me, it's like the calm before the storm. Still plenty to talk about today. We'll recap our games of the week from the prior week. I believe it was week 11. Recap those, go over some of our top performers. We're going to get into some of the playoff prediction madness, and it gets more and more mad every single week. Especially, and I'd love to talk about the SEC some if we can get to that because that is just absolute chaos. And there's a couple scenarios where you can have, I think, Will, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it is up to 7 teams with 2 losses, all
Oh
in
yeah,
the same
it's
conference,
crazy.
like tied for first. So a lot of fun stuff to talk about. I think we go ahead and start off with a recap from the games of the week from last week. Brandon, over to you.
Yep, we are also live on Twitch now. I for you
Oh
guys
yeah.
that may watch this video on Twitch, I think it uploaded and it said we were live playing PGA Golf 21. So
Okay,
we're not.
We
I
can.
fixed it.
we
We
can.
could eventually, but shout out to people on Twitch as well. This is cool. This I think is going to be our new avenue for our podcast. But we will also post the recording so you guys that don't get to hop in the live can watch it and stuff like that. And we'll still be on Spotify, so no worries there. But recap for our games of the week. Now, you guys are going to hear me talk about this team a lot throughout this podcast and this live stream here. Um,
Oh, he's got some hopes and dreams for them.
yeah. First, we had. I mean, I love this setup we had this weekend. It was UGA versus Ole Miss at Ole Miss. A lot on the line for both teams. Um, Absolute beatdown for my Georgia Bulldogs, which is upsetting. We'll get into all of that later. Um, But we took it over to Colorado versus Texas Tech. Absolute domination from the Buffs, as we expected, as we wanted. We love to see it. Been telling you guys all year, and I thought about this as soon as the weekend was over. You guys gave me and one of our other comrades, Will Sizemore, you guys gave us a lot of crap over the offseason, the preseason, and said there's no way Colorado wins 5 games this year. What if I were to tell you guys back then in the preseason that Colorado and Georgia would have the same exact record this point in the season? Y'all would have
That's
called me
tough.
crazy.
I would have called
But
you depressed.
Yeah, it does kind of suck at the
but
same
with
time.
flying all over the field, Colorado still takes a W out there. And then we ended off the nightcap with another huge SEC game with Alabama versus LSU in Death Valley. Um, Very surprising outcome for me. I was hoping for a lot closer game and a lot more exciting game, but I know Nate, being the Alabama fan that he is, super happy with the outcome of that game. Very impressive showing from Alabama. They are starting to fire at the right time, I would say, and I think they've found much more identity on both sides of the football. It looks like a lot more consistent play from them, and I would say for our losers in our games of the week, very very scary. I mean, Texas Tech. I don't think anybody had them going anywhere in the playoff or anything. But these other teams like Georgia and LSU, very very scary losses. I would say. A lot of question marks surrounding the team after what we had thought a couple weeks ago. It's just a lot's going on, a lot's flipping to concerns for those programs. So we shall see how it goes down the next couple weeks.
So let's go ahead and Let's do Colorado and Texas Tech first, and then we'll do the two SEC games. And I think we can maybe segue that into like a mini baked beans because I'd love to talk about just some of the madness with SEC and kind of some of the scenarios that are going to play out there. And then we'll go toilet bowl and all that afterwards. But let's start with Colorado and Texas Tech. Brandon, they're your guys, man. So I mean, I'd love for you to start us off here and give us your thoughts.
So I didn't watch too much of this game, but I've seen a lot of this game. Um, you know, first of all, I didn't know that tortillas were a thing. Did any of you guys were you guys aware of that going into the game?
I've seen it in the
Nope.
past.
I did not know that was a thing at all. So that was wild to see. But there's literally fans throwing tortillas on the field. Like Travis Hunter picked one up and like saved it, like as a token of that game, I guess. But I'm telling you, I mean, it's Colorado is in a spot where they really control the rest of their season. Like it is completely up to them how far they want to go this season, and that's a good spot to be, especially in the Big 12. When I guess I think you would agree with this, Nate, where the competition in that conference isn't as deep as any of these other big conferences that we talk about. So, really good spot for those guys to be in. I think they have a really talented football team on both sides of the ball. Shador has lived up to his preseason hype that we talked about, and that all the other, you know, professionals you see on ESPN and all these other sites talked about. Travis Hunter, same thing. But I think that's what's really interesting is their offense and defensive line, and maybe the defense as a whole, has started to really come together to be a competitive force for that football team. And that's the whole thing we saw last year. They could throw the ball, they could score some points, but they just couldn't block and they could not play defense. So we were taking overs on their games that were at like 65 points, which is insane. But it seems to me this year that their defense have stepped up, and I think Nate would agree with that too.
Which still would have hit, by the way. The over still would have hit.
True.
Yeah.
So a couple things from me. Colorado's offense continues to kind of click. This I saw this stat, and I could be off by a couple numbers. Travis Hunter played 195 snaps.
That's hard.
195 snaps. So, and I've been throwing Cam Ward out there because he's had a great season himself. We've been throwing Genty out there. This dude played almost 200 snaps in a single football game, and I would argue one of their most important football games. And he played most of it. He played 80% of the game. Especially if they, win out, make some noise, make a playoff, I don't think you give the Heisman to anyone else. He is doing something that no one else in college football is capable of doing. The other thing, I think Shador is playing himself into the number one quarterback taken in the NFL draft coming up. I think Cam Ward makes a few too many bonehead plays, and I think NFL guys they look at that and they're like, do we want a backyard football player or do we want, Shador runs more of a pro style than Cam Ward does to that extent. I think if they continue to win out, I think he's kind of playing himself into that number one QB taken. They're dangerous. I don't think the defense allows them to win past a certain point, especially once you get past Big 12. I don't think the defense allows them to win. I think they get exposed there, but they can put up points. That is for sure.
This game
Yeah.
pissed me off.
Oh,
All right.
Texas Tech was up 13-0. And as you guys know, I was the only one with Texas Tech money line. Was looking glorious. And then they sold. Now I will say 14 makes it look a lot like it was a lot closer than 14 points. Texas Tech had the ball, chance to tie the game, and it was a scoop and score. So that's why it's 14. So this game wasn't a Colorado blowout by any means. I legitimately think Texas Tech had a shot to win this game. and they did, um, because like their offense can score with the best of them. It's just their defense couldn't stop a soul except for like the first 3 possessions. Then once Colorado got going, it was basically impossible to stop them. So I think, and once Texas Tech made a couple mistakes on offense, like if they cash some of those field goals in for touchdowns instead of 3 points, you get 7, and it's 21-0, not 13-0. It could be a whole different ball game.
Nate?
Yeah. I think y'all remember me saying this last week actually. Because when I made this pick, I said both teams were going to be able to score decently well. At the end of the day, though, Colorado is going to be able to get more stops, and that's simply what happened. And going back to Brandon's point earlier about how their defense and offense has improved year over year, is last year Colorado lost a bunch of games because they could not get second half stops to save their life. This year, they're still in dogfights the first half, but what changes is that D-line's holding up longer throughout the game. The secondary is holding up longer throughout the game. So when the fourth quarter gets here, they're getting those key stops and then adding on that touchdown or two at the end of the game. And that's why they're having success right now. I mean, their offense, it's the same as last year. Still can score on just about anybody, but that defense is what's really improved. And I think that's what's going to lead them to more success this year.
And totally good. I mean, great point there. I think they've been in some games where they've been tested, and we talk about that on this podcast a good bit. Anyways, like our team's tested enough to go into big games where they're gonna be tested, and can they come out of that victorious? And I think Colorado has been put in a situation where, I mean, they're tested week in, week out, just based on who they've been playing. And you look at their losses, and they lost to Kansas State, who I think in this point in the season, if those two teams played, I think Colorado would be favored as far as a betting perspective would go now. So I just think they're getting better each week, which is good.
Yeah, and their defense still is not like great, but all they needed was that little bit of improvement, to
Right
get these
now,
wins. Yeah.
If you throw this Colorado team into, let's say, like a schedule as far as like Alabama, Florida, Georgia, as far as those teams have to play, they're probably
it's different.
3-7 to this point or something like that. So I just think being in the Pac-12 helps them out, or Big 12 helps them out, but it's just that's where they are. They're still winning games. It's all you can do.
Yep.
Anything else on this one before we move on?
Nope.
All right, let's take it over to let's go Georgia at Ole Miss.
Can I go first? Let
Go
me
ahead.
go ahead and get my points out of the way.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, because I got a lot to say.
Yeah, and I actually I can't remember if it was Cam Brenner or Willer who I told this to earlier. The one thing that caught my eye in this game is Georgia's defense played really well. They allowed 5 field goals, if I'm not mistaken. 5 field goals, 2 touchdowns. I mean, those type of games, Carson Beck and the Georgia offense has got to give your team a chance to win, because that's a lot of points, but at the end of the day, that's impressive against that Ole Miss offense. And I think y'all called it, last time we were on here, is Carson Beck cannot go out there and win a football game. And that really showed. At the end of the day, though, Ole Miss played great defense. Their offense moved the ball as usual, but I still want to give the credit to Georgia's defense like we've been doing all year. I mean, they held their own. They just couldn't get the support.
Well, that's nice of you to say.
Yeah.
I mean, 5 field goals.
I'm sorry.
I get it. I get it.
They man, and I should have, for betting purposes, I should have gone with my gut, because if you guys remember, the first thing I said was, like, when we have games like this, I always go back to who needs it more, and I said Ole Miss. Like, Ole Miss needed this game more, and like, dude, it showed. Like, on the field, it showed. Like, just fire, passion. Like, they came out with, how they came out is how Georgia came out when they played Texas. That's what it reminded me of, just in reverse fashion. When that defense gets going for Ole Miss, that's a scary bunch. They're tough to handle. And I don't. They're ranked. Their defense is ranked pretty high, but like in terms of intensity, I don't know if I've seen them come out with like that level of intensity. Like, any offense is going to struggle against that. Like, that was kind of like leveled up for this game, and I think that's the team that needs to win. Also, they're at home and they got the crowd with them, and you could tell they were boosted. But like no excuses. Like they were the better team. They played like the better team. They deserved to win the game. In my eyes, I think it was Carson Beck's worst performance, not in terms of like turnovers or anything like that, but in terms of confidence. He looked like he was not prepared for the moment. It looked like, it's like a game manager who is being asked to go win a football game and is just not equipped to do that. Like a game manager is someone that, they can play with, if they've got the lead and that you're getting the run game established and the game manager is just there to not make mistakes and not turn the ball over, not do too much. That's what he looked like, except they were down by 17 or however many they were down. And they didn't need him to be that. They needed him to be the guy to win them a football game. He was not ready for that moment. That was the least inspiring performance I have seen out of him to date. I have never been more disappointed in watching him play.
That's more so on the same page I'm at. So, like, Nate, thank you. I'll say that first.
Trying to soften the blow for
it was
us.
An awful performance, but I still want to give Georgia the credit. Y'all said they got a good defense. I mean, they did give up 5 field goals. Like their red zone defense did show up. But
that's a good point, because you kind of are bringing me back down to earth a little bit, because I was fully prepared to come on here tonight and say, screw the whole team, like cut them all,
burn it down,
cut every coach fire every coach except Kirby. Just give me a complete reset. But you are right. I mean, for the defense to hold that offense to a lot more field goals per se than touchdowns is an impressive factor in that game. Especially when it felt like it was almost like the Kentucky game that Georgia played in, where it felt like we could not stop them at all until they got to like the 30-yard line. And then it was like, okay, we've bent this far. We're not going to break and give you a touchdown, but we'll spot you 3. And what was even more impressive, like to your point, Nate, is that with that amount of turnovers and just bad field position given up, it is impressive that we held them to field goals. Now, you guys all know, I've been Georgia's biggest advocate since day one. I have come on here and defended them till the end, no matter how they play. Almost to a point where it's like, okay, that's not an analyst perspective. That's just a fan. And I just cannot do that anymore, man. I'm so sick of watching Carson Beck play football. I'm so sick of the fact that he drives around in a Lamborghini. He's out here. He has probably the most interceptions as an SEC quarterback in probably the last 20 years. And he's over there sitting on the sidelines, smiling, acting like he doesn't care that we're getting the absolute mess beat out of us in what I would say is somewhat of a must-win game, because now Georgia's the rest of their season, they have to win out, and then they put themselves in the hands of the College Football Playoff Committee, which has not boded well for them the last times they've been right there on the edge. So I think Carson Beck was completely made by Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers and these super athletes that we haven't seen before at Georgia in the last few years. And now that we don't have those weapons, and Carson Beck has to be a little bit better, and like Cam said, he's got to lead that offense to score, and he's got to be a guy. He's not that guy. He is a very, very average mid quarterback. I think I saw something today where Carson Beck in the NFL, his like floor would be like a Will Levis, but his ceiling would only be like a Jameis Winston, like that type of quarterback. And I completely agree with that. And it's just upsetting to see, because I just don't know if Georgia has the talent. And as a football perspective, when you don't have the talent top to bottom, like they have had in the last few years, what do you have to do? You have to have a great scheme that beats the other team. In Georgia, with Mike Bobo's offense, you're not going to have either one of those. We don't have talent, and we have an awful offensive scheme to where the defense is relied on game in, game out, and it's just too much. I mean, like we said in the last podcast, defense can still win championships, but you have to score freaking points, and you can't run right down the middle, and you can't run screenplay after screenplay after screenplay. Just you can't win football games like that.
As the resident Florida fan here, it was glorious to watch. Just to see Carson Beck just absolutely crumble. And then while he's down 18 on the bench, smiling over there. But I think I said it last week. He was the projected #1 pick coming into this year and has played himself out of the first round. He is a day 2
Maybe
pick.
the second or third.
He's a day 2 pick, probably teetering on a day 3 pick, which is crazy. Which, I mean, honestly, the only thing keeping him alive in day 2 is that he's a quarterback. Any other position is he's borderline undrafted. He's playing that bad.
I would still come on here and probably have Carson Beck's back if it weren't for that. But after seeing him like act like that, I wish him the complete worst.
So
I hope he goes undrafted. If he does get drafted, I hope he's booted out of the league in 1 year.
So we see this a lot. I think to like baseball a lot. Like guys are hungry and they're like playing their tails off because they're playing for like that massive contract. And then when they get that contract, a lot of times you kind of see that performance tail off a little. Javi Baez, for example, like they get that money and all of a sudden you see, oh, I made it. Albert Pujols, his was injury related, but like you kind of get it, right? Does NIL have something to do with like? He looks less motivated to me. Like it looks like he's secured a bag. You know, he drives the nicest car in the freaking league. Like, does this have something to do with it, or is he really just not that good?
I
think it does.
The funniest thing is I'll like go and I'll see his ad on TikTok about his little milk, and it says milk helps me like my game get better. And then you just go to the comments and it says, what game is getting better?
Does it?
Literally on the ad comments itself.
So real quick, since you brought up NIL and Carson Beck, this is the way you got to look at it. I think it affects some, and I'm going to go into Alabama here because obviously I'm biased. Look at Carson Beck, his attitude with all the money he makes, right? Compare him to Ryan Williams and Milroe, or like anybody else on that team. Like they're still hungry. They win. They love the game they're playing. They're busting their butts on the field. Whereas Carson Beck's just, it looks more or less he's just there for the check. You know, and he knows he's good enough to still get drafted.
And
it might be the 5th round.
He's got TikTok girlfriend, another distraction.
Hey, ever since the post with her, it's been downhill.
And I just don't understand why. I mean, Kirby being Kirby, like, I wouldn't say we lack depth at quarterback either. I mean, we got Ryan Plagese. We got the transfer from Minnesota.
Gunnar Stockton.
Yeah, Gunnar Stockton, who's played in big games before at some points. Yeah. I mean, at least bench the guy for 2 series and see what Stockton can do.
Do you expect Carson Beck to get benched against Tennessee?
He's not.
Nope.
No, he's not.
Too late. It's too late in the season. They're riding him until the end. That's just the way it's going to be.
Even if he comes out, those 2 first-half picks.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Not this late in the season. It's the deal is sealed. He is going to be the quarterback for however long the season lasts.
It's ride or die with him.
Shout out the Twitch chat. My brother's in the Twitch chat, and he was at the game actually. So he brings up another good point. Georgia's offensive line, F tier against Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
F tier.
Yeah. They got exposed. Yeah, they got and they've low key been getting exposed kind of week in. Like we've got other strengths in our game that kind of like nullify it, but I give partial credit to Ole Miss.
I don't know.
I
don't know if we can get an exact number on this, but how many strip sacks has happened with Carson Beck this year?
I don't know.
I feel like it's a ton.
3. Yeah, well, they fumbled 4 times this past game. They only lost 2 of them, but I don't know if they weren't all him, but I think 2 of them were him.
I feel like there's at least been since the Bama game. I feel like there's been 2 strip sacks a game. That's just what it feels like.
There was multiple people on Ole Miss's D line that had multiple sacks, so they got exposed.
Yeah, he got sacked 5 times. They sacked him 5 times.
Yeah, it was bad. And I legit think that's what made Georgia so good these past 3 years, because Stequavius Bennett was not getting touched at all. Like, he
No.
had 10 yards of space. Also, shout out, I don't know if he's watching, but shout out Pierce if he's there. He said Carson Beck was going to be the 101 at the beginning of the year. Not even close now. So shout
It's
out
gonna
him.
be the 632.
I mean, that's just what we've seen. I mean, that's just football. Like, the battle is won, games are won on the offense and defensive line. In these last few years, Georgia, like when they won back-to-back national championships, they had the best offensive line and best defensive line in pretty much every game they played. Now they're getting exposed. I would still say the defensive line is really good. I wouldn't say it's elite or like the best of the best. Still really good. But I mean, offensive line, I think Carson Beck is bad. He is the main problem. But when he doesn't have time to throw, it makes it even worse. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding Georgia. I know their last, like, this stretch of games is probably the hardest stretch of games we've ever seen. Um, just with ever since Alabama, they've had to play Texas away. They've had to, I mean, I would consider the Florida game an away game for both teams because you both have to travel a little bit. And then Ole Miss at Ole Miss, hopefully against Tennessee this upcoming week, which we'll get into. This home atmosphere is turns the team around a little bit. That's my only hope.
And see, like, and it sucks now because the narrative is like, Georgia's been in like the SEC East, right? So like some of the
Right.
other teams they're not regularly exposed to. So now you get the narrative where it's like, well, now they've got to play all of the SEC and they're not hidden by the SEC East anymore. And it's like, well, I can't argue against you because we're
Right.
freaking losing more games than we've lost in the last 3 years. So
Can I
that
just-
part sucks too.
Real quick point. Did y'all see that lefty that came in for Ole Miss?
He was decent.
Dude's got
Yeah, he was slinging
dude's got
that
an
thing.
arm. So
Yeah, he was
if-
People are
slinging that
comparing
thing.
him to Tua.
I think, dude, for real. I meant to bring that up earlier, but I think Ole Miss is pretty good at quarterback next year if he's their guy.
Yeah, he was
I
slinging
mean,
it.
with that
Can't even
offense,
lie.
you got to have a good quarterback. You don't have a good quarterback in that offense, you're cooked.
Coming in
They're
from
always-
the chat,
they-
got someone saying, "Do y'all think home field advantage will be enough for Georgia to take on Tennessee?" I mean, it helps, obviously.
Tennessee,
Yeah.
yes. For me, yes. And we'll get
think-
more
I
into
think
that's
it's a
gonna be one of our
blackout.
games of the week, anyways.
I think Georgia's
What's
doing
that?
a blackout at home.
They are.
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean,
don't
like,
know if that
it'll-
means
Pulling
they're
out all
gonna
the
wear
stops I see.
Yeah, I don't think they'll wear their black jerseys because they just never do. But maybe there will be the atmosphere will help them in their favor. So
it's
What's the
it's
game
definitely-
time?
I think it's.
I think
it's a
6:30 or
night game.
7:30.
Yeah.
That also
It's-
helps.
Yeah, it's
also,
definitely gonna help.
also get Jake Pope off the team. You guys know who that is?
Get him
Yeah.
out of here.
Get him off the team.
Yeah.
I don't want him in the locker room. I don't want him doing anything with Georgia football anymore ever.
He's an
the guy
idiot.
He's the guy that looked like he was celebrating with Ole Miss after the game, and he came out. He came out and posted some apology on Instagram. No. It wasn't taken
I don't
out of
want your
context,
apology.
buddy. Wasn't taken out of context. We all saw you on video. Get off the team. Go find somewhere else to play football.
But yeah, I do think the home field is going to help, and I also think historically, Georgia does very well after a loss. History tells us if they lose a game, they generally come back out the next week, and you see a different, better version of them. I don't know if it guarantees victory, but there are those motivating factors that are on their side.
Yeah, it's because Kirby is, for some reason, will have them.
The best motivator in the world.
Yes, like they're gonna be saying, "Oh, everyone's doubting us. Everyone's doubting us," even though they're favored.
Well, now
by
they are.
9. They're favored by
now
10.
I'm their biggest fan. I'm doubting them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're favored by
now
10
we are
doubting it.
against a
think
top
this
10
is-
team, which is crazy.
I mean, hey, good. If you can motivate your guys, that's just that's a good attribute as a head coach. I mean, you don't want to play for a guy that just doesn't care. But going back to when Alabama lost, it was the first. Yeah, it was against Vanderbilt. I think Nate was like, "We needed this loss. It'll, hopefully help clean some things up and kind of be a punch in the face. Hopefully, and they've turned things around, especially after Tennessee. I mean, you see where they're at now. But hopefully this does the same thing for Georgia. But I just don't know if that's enough to get over how bad Carson Beck is and how bad the offensive line has been.
So perfect segue. We'll roll into game of the week number 3. The team that did bounce back following a bye week, Alabama at LSU. Nate, I know you've got some thoughts. Go ahead.
I do. I think you said or kind of referenced this. This is the first time I feel like I've seen real Alabama football for like 6 years. Right, on the offensive side and defensive side, whatever. I'll get into that in a little bit, but I'll start with the defense. I know everybody doubted it. Everybody's doubted it all year. I was like, just give it time. Just give it time. I didn't really speak too much about it on here, but Bama's defense now has forced 3 turnovers in 4 of their last 5 games. Even against Tennessee, the game they lost, 3 turnovers. They're flying around the ball. They're getting hits on the quarterback. They're bringing pressure. They're getting penetration on the line. The defense is doing everything it needs to be doing right now. And with that being said, we also have, I know for sure, at least 3 underclassmen on the defensive side of the ball. We got some injuries. These guys are stepping up, doing what they're supposed to be doing. Bray Hubbard is a dog at safety. I know Keon Sabb, love him to death, but Bray Hubbard has stepped up and has been a dog for us. Just keeping that quick, flipping over to the offensive side of the ball. Guys, I mean, Jalen Milroe. I think I'll just start off by saying this goes to show that I think he was at least beat up for a couple weeks. That burst he had in the LSU game was not there against Tennessee, was not there against South Carolina, really wasn't even there against Missouri. Vanderbilt, I think, is where it kind of fell off a little bit. But we kept the ball on the ground. We established a run game with him. Our running backs only averaged a little over 3 yards a carry, but they still had almost 200 yards themselves. Offensive line blocking really well. I know we changed the snap count up front, so we knocked down penalties a lot. One of the most impressive things to me, though, is not that Milroe ran for 185 yards. Like, don't get me wrong, that's a huge deal. But the fact that he went 12 of 18, and if I'm not mistaken, almost all those passes were underneath or he was rolling out. Like, he's starting to show the improvements from last year into this year in the passing game, and I think it just makes this that much more dangerous.
So I called it a little bit. I thought this was the game where, as long as he was healthy and rested, I thought they were going to run Milroe, and he was going to be able to do his thing. And that's why I had Alabama winning this game. And 12 carries, 185 yards, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know how many. 4 touchdowns? Was it 4 touchdowns?
He had 4, yeah.
And that's a healthy Milroe. That's I will argue with anyone that is the most dynamic player in college football.
He's the most dangerous.
There's no one
for
else
sure.
that can do what he does. No one else can do that. So well executed. I think that's exactly what they needed. That bye week, that is the most helpful bye week I have ever seen for a team. Like, that is exactly what they needed. They came out and took care of business in what was supposed to be a tough environment. The crowd was leaving, like, early fourth. The crowd was gone. They were quiet in the second, like, so that's what you got to do. Like, you got to sustain drives, you got to break off big plays. If you can nullify the crowd in those situations, you're going to have the advantage, and they were able to do that early and often. And those people were leaving with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. No fans left.
Yeah.
My concern, so, like, kind of like go with like the flow of the season. Early on, like, you're seeing Milroe run, and he gets to this point where he plays a tough game, a tough, like with Georgia, tough game, and he's not quite the same for like 3 weeks. He gets the bye week, so he's rested, looks like himself again. How does that bode for him in a playoff situation? Let's say they get to the playoffs, or like, I'm not necessarily, conference championship. You're gonna have some rest after the conference championship, but, like, let's go. Maybe they lose the conference championship. They're in the first round. Whoever they play, going to be a tough game, and he's probably going to run a lot. He tends to get nicked up. He tends to get banged up. How does he handle that second game? And I think that's going to be, especially if they don't get that bye, that's where I'm worried about Bama's staying power in, like, a playoff situation. How does he handle having to go back-to-back games? And I think there's, like, a little bit more, maybe it's 10 days in between games or something like that. So there's a little bit more rest. But that would still concern me, how well he handles, back-to-back really difficult, taxing games.
And I'm not saying these next 3 weeks are easy. Like, obviously, we got Mercer, then Oklahoma, then Auburn.
They're easy. They're easy.
Auburn, I will say we've lost to 3-win Auburn teams. Whatever.
There.
Yes. but it's in Tuscaloosa. The one thing is, though, is I think these next 3 weeks is going to be a really good time for him to showcase his arm, get some work in that aspect of the game. And then this weekend
True.
against Mercer, he should be able to sit out the last quarter, maybe half.
You would hope.
He'd be able
Yeah,
to sit
you
out the
would
whole
hope.
game.
Yeah,
good.
but I still want him to work on throwing the ball. Like he should
About
not
to
run
say
the
it's a
ball
good
at all.
opportunity to work
Yes.
on some different routes, in game scenarios.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
I
against Oklahoma, maybe be a good time if we get up just to let him air it out.
Well,
Honestly,
yeah, because they're not going to score any points.
that bye week
Oklahoma, I
and
mean.
then big game and then basically not like basically but kind of 3 bye weeks in a row just to test stuff because Oklahoma and Auburn are pretty bad.
Our defense would definitely hold us in that.
The one thing that's crazy to me is that all like your whole offense was Jalen Monroe running the football. You like the running backs weren't very effective throwing the ball. I think you guys only had like 109 yards passing or something like that. But he's the most dangerous player in the country. And then the one thing that was the most impressive to me is how inefficient Nussmeier was against your defense because he threw a lot of passes and completed a decent amount of them, but he only had 200 yards. Like he threw 42 passes and completed 27 of them and only had about 200 yards. It's that's the one, like keeping everything in front of you because you guys had such a big lead that you guys were able to do that. And then he was also kind of running for his life. So that helped. And then the one thing too is I think this game is a lot closer. Maybe not LSU wins, but a lot closer than how many was it? 29 points. LSU had so many bad timed penalties. It was very crazy.
They at least have 21, I think, like 43-21, something like
They'd
that.
get like a 60-yard play, penalty called back for holding, something like that. And honestly, like, yes, like you have time to fix those, but I think in general it was so demoralizing for them that they're like, oh my god,
Yep.
we have to go back 40 yards after just having a big play.
And try again. Yeah.
Yes.
Against
Um,
Bama.
Flip that around though. Bama was very, very good with penalties. Like that's
Yeah.
something I was happy to see.
Yeah. Also, shout out to the chat. I know Brandon responded, but yeah, that hasn't been the standard for UGA these past 2 years. 5 field goals and 2 TDs. Because I mean, honestly, you guys have had some of the best defenses of all time. That will never be y'all standard again. No offense, because UGA, probably the 21 and 22 team, has the 2 best defenses of all time. It's just impossible to replicate that. Which I mean, you guys have been spoiled with, so you're gonna want it every time. It's kind of like how we are with the Braves. We were spoiled with the 2021 team, so we're like, okay, we should be dominant. We were spoiled in the regular season in 22, where we won 103 games, and then couldn't win in the playoffs because it's legitimately the hardest championship to win, the World Series. It's all just about who's hot. Like, I think that's why. But yeah, Beck's meltdown, obviously something, and yes, tough schedules, but honestly, now with conference realignment, every schedule is going to be pretty tough. It's going to be tough every year. SEC is the best conference in the country, and it's just going to be something they have to live with because no matter what, they're going to have 4 to 5 tough games a year. And when I mean tough, like top 15 matchups, every SEC team is going to have it. It's just who comes out on top, who goes 3-1 in those games will go to the SEC championship, and who goes 2-2 will be the teams that are left out and in the hands of the playoff committee.
Which I love. Like this is the hardest brand of football that I've like had to predict and make bets on. But it is also the most exciting. It's been the most fun season I think that I've seen so far, just with all the parity and anyone can. It feels almost pro-like, where anyone can. Not anyone, like KSU is not going to beat certain teams, but like for the most, especially if you get into Power Fours, like it almost feels like within conference, like anyone can beat anyone on a given day,
What you mean?
which I
KSU 's
love
beating
for the
Florida.
game. Yeah,
Billy Napier to KSU.
I don't
Hey,
know.
the fireworks in that
So they need a
game.
coach.
Billy
The
Napier.
fireworks in that game. It's pretty electric.
I know. Hey, your boy, your boy called something like that, didn't he? Um,
I will say this was a game I tuned into, the Toilet Bowl. We had a watcher
well,
this
it's your
week.
local, it's your local team. You got to.
Alumni.
Uh, Brandon, before we move into Toilet Bowl, did you have any thoughts on Alabama and LSU before we move on?
I mean, you guys did a good job covering it.
I know.
All y'all's points were good. I've been waiting since the South Carolina versus LSU game for a team to expose LSU, and you know, being a Georgia fan, it almost sucks that it was Bama because they did look really good. But I think up to this point, LSU is a little bit fraudulent. I mean, I think they have a good quarterback, but like you guys were saying, I think they're a really undisciplined team and they lack good defense, consistency at defense, and you just when you play the big boys and you play a team like especially like Alabama, you have to have consistent defense where you can command the field, you can control all their weapons. And Alabama showed that they had too many weapons to control, especially with Milrow. Assuming that he wasn't 100% healthy, and now he is, like you guys were saying, he's the most dangerous guy in college football. So um, I just think LSU is a little fraudulent. And, moving forward, I've still been seeing there's ways that they can make it into the bracket, into the playoff. But if it were up to me, I don't think they're a top 12 team in the country by
No,
any
No.
means. So
no.
I'm glad
Nah.
they got exposed here.
Before we move
Yeah,
on,
go ahead.
got a question coming in the chat specifically
Excellent.
for Coach Cam.
Okay.
Coming from a loyal LSU or FSU fan, what should be the first move Florida State needs to make in the offseason to start the process
not.
to get that program
There's
back
not.
on track?
There's not one. There is not a singular move, and they're already moving
out.
some pieces.
Shout out B Hilly 8 because he went to college with me. He's from Panama City. He is a diehard Florida State
Oh,
fan.
look at this.
You're able
Yeah.
to put that on the.
Oh my, we're
That's
legit.
hey,
Oh,
we're
yeah.
pro. Hey, we're pro.
Hey, don't show up to Dope Camel with a bomb strapped on your chest. Show up to like all the coordinators that were fired. Show up to their houses because they were the reason.
Yeah. So I mean, that's unlike. So in my opinion, like the moves have like the dominoes have started to fall. Like obviously, like it's been deemed unacceptable the way that they have performed. But like I don't think this is a 1 year fix. Like he took a gamble with, playing the portal game and just grabbing as many people from the portal and mixing and matching and hoping these dudes stick, and it didn't work. So it's gonna be you got to go a little bit old fashioned. Obviously you're always going to use the portal if you're a good, a solid reputable program, but you got to build from within a little bit. You got to really focus on development with some of your younger guys, because it's going to take next year will not be that much better. It'll be better because it cannot be worse. They're gonna have 2 wins at the end of the year. I think next year, if they do a good job, they're gonna have to do a solid job in the portal and pick the right pieces. Definitely get a quarterback. Start there. Um, but they're going to need to focus on developing from the high school level, developing from that recruit, and really making those guys, players early on, so they can stay with the program for a decent amount of years, and you build back up that way. But it will take time.
So B Hill actually sent me a text earlier about a post saying Florida State is the only team in college football that hasn't scored. I think it was more than 21 points this season.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is
Yep.
insane.
One
And
thing
you know
too,
what? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. I think next year, I think what's going to be funny is FSU is going to go all in on the portal one more year because Norvell is going to be coaching for his job. I think
Yeah.
if he has another year that's like 4-8, even 5-7 potentially, his job, like he's getting fired. So I
Yeah.
think it's
He's
literally
going to
all
use it.
all in next year. If you guys go 8-4, he keeps his job, and then that's when the rebuild happens. That's when you start
Yeah.
building from within. Because I think legitimately, if he does not have a solid year next year, he's not going to be there because he's only had one good year there, and they didn't even get to go to the playoff
Yeah.
with it. So
Cam Rising to FSU.
God, what
Don't
is he,
even get me
34?
started.
He's
Don't
like
even
he's,
know.
he's my age.
That's honestly a worse move than DJ, because at least DJ was on. I mean, he's not on the field now, but at least DJ will be on the field.
Yeah.
I honestly don't even think DJ's hurt. I think they told him you're not starting the rest of the year, fake an injury.
They're going with the
They're
freshman
done.
boys
They're
because
done.
they're trying to develop someone. That's that's part of it is like they've got 2 freshman guys that they're trying to dude, they're like every other possession they're just flip-flopping and seeing like
I
is
mean,
anyone going to make a play? And no one's
why
making a play.
look
No.
at
They're getting them the
Georgia?
reps.
Look at Georgia. Look at Bama. Look at Tennessee. Like, look at all these teams that have been good year over year because they develop everybody from the beginning.
Yep. That's part of it, and sometimes you lose sight of it. The transfer portal has caused a lot of teams to lose sight of that. It's a necessary evil. Like if you're not using the portal, like you're not going to compete with some of these other teams. But you cannot be like your success cannot be predicated solely on using the portal, as we've seen with FSU.
Yeah.
Let's move on to let's do toilet bowl real quick because I had a mixed bag this past week in terms of like success rate. But I am very proud of this one and one more, which we will talk about later. I said a fireworks show was happening with the KSU and UTEP, and God almighty, it was a fireworks show. What was it, 43-35 in overtime?
Yeah, it was
The
actually a really
over
good game.
the over-under was 41.5, fellas. One team hit that by themselves. It was the easiest money I've ever made.
It was actually really fun to watch. And I was
No,
watching.
don't say that.
It was, which is crazy. Like UTEP's quarterback, not good all year, but KSU's defense made him look like legit, like he was Brock Purdy out there. Like he was moving
Yeah.
around in the pocket, just dicing us up. Davis Bryson was not great in the first half, which Nate didn't like that. But in the second half, he got us back in the game. Honestly, to send that to overtime was a pretty good accomplishment for KSU because we are very bad at football. Fired our coach directly after, as we should. Little too late. Should have done it before this year. But going into FBS with a new coach probably doesn't sound like a good formula. Kind of keep the culture, the losing
What could
culture.
be worse?
But we got some good options in the coaching carousel that I'm actually fairly excited for. Now, will we get one of them? Probably not. But because we're KSU, we don't really make good decisions.
And it's also not that attractive of a job offer.
I mean, you get the build up. I think we're only going to go after coordinators. We're not going to go after head coaches. But I did see a rumor, and this isn't a rumor. I just saw it online. The Carrollton High School head coach. That would be something.
He is successful in what he does.
He is successful, and he actually was the Cartersville head coach when Trevor Lawrence was there.
So what you're predicting is he's going to take the job and bring Juju Lewis with him.
Maybe.
Yeah.
No, not a shot. I don't think it'll actually be him. I think it'll be I think I've heard like coordinators from UNLV. Like, I think it'll be a good coordinator from a Group of 4 school that comes over. But yeah, I think this game was actually fun to watch. It was bad offenses looking good, which is rare. But yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. I think like UTEP's quarterback threw for like 300 and had like 3 or 4 touchdowns or something.
Yeah,
It's like a career day for him.
I think I want to say in overtime, like we actually had a chance to get a stop, and then he just moves around in the pocket, kind of not really throws up a prayer, but like just moves around in the pocket and just finds a guy wide open in the end zone, which was very
Kind of like
impressive.
Jalen Milroe.
Kind of
last year.
Honestly, like Cam, but like Cam Ward would do. He would just run around nonchalantly, just sidearm one, just like straight into a guy's hands who's wide open in the end zone. But yeah, that game was fun. I enjoyed watching the toilet bowl.
Nate, Brandon, do you have any
Nope.
thoughts on the toilet bowl before we move on?
Kennesaw State was not up at halftime, so I don't care.
Yeah, I
you
didn't
just
watch.
lost. You say that every toilet bowl. Nope, didn't watch. It's either made money, didn't make money.
Listen,
Yeah.
the only
We'll-
thing
we'll
I've
do it
learned from
this
these
week.
the only thing I've learned from these toilet bowl games is do not ever bet on Liberty on a Wednesday night.
Nope, that 100%, 100%. That is, we're taking that with us next year too.
Or-
We're always going to remember that.
Whenever I bet on bet for KSU, take the opposite. Whenever I bet against them, take them to do well. Simple as that.
Understood. Don't forget. Let's move to individual plays. So we'll abbreviate individual plays, kind of like we discussed. Just go.
Yep.
What was your record? What was your wins? What was your losses? We'll keep it pushing because we want to talk about playoff predictions. No problem. I love that they pop up, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. So you just want me to go ahead like usual?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All
Yeah.
right.
Start with Nate.
Yeah. So I started with BYU -4.5 against Utah. That was my plus money play of the week, and that did not hit at all. They could have even lost that game. I think it was a pretty sloppy performance by BYU. The fact that they even let Utah back in that game was kind of ridiculous to me in the second half, and the way it ended. Everybody's got their own thoughts about that. But
What Utah's supposed to win that game? There was some controversial stuff.
yeah, it was a defensive holding, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, anyways, BYU did not really look great that second half and allowed Utah to come back in it. Iowa State versus Kansas. I'm gonna keep this quick. Kansas remembered how to play football all of a sudden, and it was just all of a sudden the week I had Iowa State to win. They screwed me last week.
They've been
too.
pretty good lately.
Yeah, their offense is looking a lot better. They started off the year pretty cold, but they're getting hot. They're getting hot at the right time, even though it does not matter for them. They're
Means
just
nothing.
still playing good. It means nothing, but they're upsetting teams, and whatever. I had Iowa State -3. That they lost again.
That's correct.
I had Cincy over 30.5 against West Virginia, and I could not tell you how this did not hit. Cincinnati averages just about over 30 every single game they've played. It was kind of a sloppy offensive performance by them. I wasn't sure who's going to win this, which West Virginia did come out on top, but I did think it was going to be a little higher scoring. So that's how my individual plays went.
Finally fell back down to earth a little bit. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Will. Big Ten.
I fell down as well. Only fell down like a small flight of stairs. I had
There's some
Iowa
bumps and bruises.
Iowa -6.5 versus UCLA. I didn't intend for Iowa to have a former linebacker at quarterback, their fifth string. He led a touchdown drive though.
Excellent.
But they ended up losing the game when I had them -6.5. So didn't really go well. Indiana, the boys finally failed me against Michigan of all teams. -13.5. They only won by 5. Good teams find a way to win ugly games, though, and that's what Indiana did. They're still beating Ohio State.
Still undefeated.
And the plus money play hit for the first time in a while. Notre Dame -27.5 versus Florida State. They won by
-45.
Yeah, they won by 49. Notre Dame is maybe not a national championship contender, but I think they have a chance to make some noise in the playoff. I don't think they're with the Oregons, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, but I think they have a chance to win a playoff game, and they're gonna do something. But I will say, I had 49-8 written down. I was close. They scored 52. I was close, and they won by 49. So I feel like that's pretty close. But yeah,
no,
1
that's
and
good.
2 on my plays.
All right, we'll go ACC. I went 1 and 2 as well. Like I said, kind of a mixed bag for me this past week. I went 2 and 1 on games of the week, and I hit the toilet bowl, but 1 and 2 on individuals, so slightly above 500. First game, Cal Wake Forest. Again, I went 50-50 on this. I had the Cal cover, but then I also had Wake Forest not scoring more than 24 points. Wake Forest scored like 36. It was actually a shootout, which I was not expecting. But Cal won by 10. So 50% there. I'll take the L on the podcast, but I actually did end up making money there because I put more units on the cover. I'm going to do the other loss, which was Syracuse at Boston College. That was my plus money play. Syracuse did not win the football game. They gave up 321 yards and 3 touchdowns rushing. Not over just the other team running the football. 48 carries for 321. That I don't
What's that
know
average?
how. It was 7, it was like 7.6 or something like that. Yeah, I can't, it's inexplicable. I was watching the game and I was flabbergasted at how horrible their defensive line was. Just awful.
You were
Let's go to the win. What?
You were flummoxed. Is that?
Yeah,
Did
I
I
was
use that right?
flummoxed. Yeah, I was flummoxed. That's correct. Yeah, confused. Yeah. Last one, Miami at Georgia Tech. The writing was on the wall, fellas. I told y'all to look at the spreadsheet. I had this one all the way. My best play of the day. Obviously Georgia Tech covered at +11, but they also won the football game 28-23. Let me get this reflection off my holy cow. 28-23, a clinical performance from Georgia Tech. They played the exact game that they wanted to play in order to beat Miami. Executed flawlessly. I could not have been more pleased. I'm taking that. That's a win in my book. So overall, I think I achieved victory, especially with that game. So it was +335 for them to win, and they won. Brandon, SEC.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep mine pretty short because we did go 3-0 for
Oh
the
my
first time in a
God.
while.
Back in the saddle.
We'll start it off with the play I was really concerned about, which was Missouri money line over Oklahoma.
was
This
a
game was
wild
at
ending.
Missouri, so Oklahoma was favored for whatever reason. I think both teams are pretty bad as far as SEC standards go, but Missouri somehow pulls it out 30-23. You love to see it when you take a plus money play just kind of off the whim like that. I mean, top to bottom, I think Missouri's more talented than Oklahoma right now. And I still think they have more veteran guys in more important positions per se. So you love to see it there. Sorry about this one, Will, but I did end up taking Texas -21 over Florida.
It was the
I
smart
mean,
play.
with no quarterback, no decent quarterback, they only got the guy from Yale right now. It's just, I mean, it was tough moving the ball, especially on a pretty efficient defense that is Texas. And the only reason I was pretty nervous about this pick was just like you've been saying, Florida's defense has been playing pretty good over the last few weeks. They've been stepping it up. That really looks Georgia look even worse because Georgia struggled against the Florida defense, and then Texas comes in there and pretty much almost does whatever they want to do. They won that game 49-17, so that banged. And then I'm telling you guys, if I had to be a fan for another team in the SEC right now, it would be the South Carolina Gamecocks. I
They're
love watching them
dangerous.
play. They play with heart. They play with passion. Sellers, he is probably the closest thing to Jalen Milroe that I've seen as far as he's a dangerous quarterback. He can do it with his arm. He can do it with his legs. And you want to talk about a defense that is getting close to being an elite team, especially against a Vanderbilt team who has caused troubles for a lot of people this year, kind of unexpectedly. But this South Carolina defensive line, their front seven is very, very fast. They like to get after the ball. It's fun to watch. I took them -3.5 against Vandy. They won 28-7. So I think if any other team, outside of the top right now that would really deserve a shot in the top 12 in the playoff, it would be South Carolina.
All right, let's where are we at on time? Yeah, let's go real quick. We'll go team of the week, dog of the week, disappointment of the week, and then we'll update the playoff bracket. Sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Team of the week, I will go ahead and start. It is Georgia Tech. Fellas, I just talked about them. Could not be more proud of the program. I'm going to leave it at that. Georgia Tech is my team of the week. Maybe the team of the year right now. They won me so much money.
I can go.
Whoever,
I'll
yeah,
do
whoever.
my team of the week. Now I get they played probably the worst team in the country. Notre Dame. 52-3 is something to be said, even if it is FSU. So I have that,
True.
and they won me money. So I mean that you get my team of the week if you win me money. So Notre Dame.
That was a relaxed sideline. If you watch
Yes,
like
it
the Notre
was.
Dame, that was a relax. They were like not a care in the world. They were just, yeah, we're taking care of business right now. Clinical. Either Nate or Brandon.
Yeah, I'll get Ole Miss all day.
Got to be.
It's got to be.
Yep.
I will say I could either go Alabama or Colorado. Either one, they both handle business. They both look good. I think if Alabama plays like that every game, there's not a lot of teams that'll be able to beat them.
That's correct. Dog of the week, I'm going to go with Kyle Robichaux, running back for Boston College. He was part of the crew that had the 321 yards rushing. He had 28 carries for 198 and 2 touchdowns. That whole unit just couldn't be stopped, but he benefited the most from it. So Kyle Robichaux.
I'm going to go with the Ole Miss D line. Shout out Princely Uman Mielen, former Florida player, transfer over to Ole Miss.
Hell of a name.
We missed you. Yeah, they absolutely dominated that game and kind of won Ole Miss the game because Georgia's offense couldn't do anything because of the Ole Miss D line.
Yeah. So mine's Jalen Milroe. Surprisingly, this is only the second time I've said his name for Player of the Week. The other time was Georgia. You'll notice resemblance here. He had 12 carries for 185 yards. And then he went 12 of 18 for 109 in the air. Just a dog performance.
Yeah, he had a day.
I'm going to go with Jackson Dart. I don't know his exact stat line, but I was very high on Nussmeier earlier in the season, and even last week, I think I mentioned he's one of the best. I think Jackson Dart just went over 10,000 yards in his career at Ole Miss. So that's really, really, really impressive. And it just seemed like there was nothing Georgia's defense could do to really stop him or contain him. I mean, he took care of the ball. He made big throws. He put it on the money. He was just a nightmare to try to defend. So he takes my player of the week.
We'll go disappointment of the week to finish this off. I'm going to go with something that's a little under the radar. It is my job to cover the ACC, so I will do so. NC State, y'all probably didn't watch. They actually were at home, had a chance to secure bowl eligibility with their 6th win, playing Duke, who they're feisty, but that is a game they should have won. They came out flat, really bad performance, couldn't get anything going offensively. They lost 29-19. And now it's going to be a battle for them to even get a bowl game. And that's a team that I had fairly high hopes. I thought they were actually going to have a pretty solid season. So NC State, disappointment of the week.
Mine is I was going to go Miami, but then I realized it was the whole state of Florida. Every team,
Yeah,
football team in Florida, except the Miami Dolphins.
they saved Florida.
And honestly, they said every team this weekend. Miami played on Monday. So every Florida team this weekend lost a football game.
Like at every level.
Yes.
Yeah. So my disappointment is going to be LSU, of course. My biggest thing with them is you knew you were bad against a quarterback run. You had 2 weeks to prepare. Brian Kelly said they're prepared, and then this happens.
They weren't ready for that.
They just weren't ready. It was just an awful performance by their defense.
Yeah, I think my answer is going to be obvious. It's Georgia. They just came out flat, bad football, and like Chat said earlier, they lead all of college football in the most drops as far as wide receiver drops go. It just can't happen. You just can't have that happen in that situation this late in the season. Very upsetting
Really?
to see.
Georgia
We'll see
leads in that?
Yep.
I thought it would be FSU. They can't catch a thing. They can't catch a cold.
Well, the ball's got to get thrown to them first.
True. Yeah, that's true. That's fair. Will, do you want to go playoff predictor update?
Let's do it.
It's about to get crazy.
My bracket goes hard.
It's about to
I'm
get
about to-
crazy.
Yeah, I haven't seen y'all's yet, so I'm pretty curious.
I'm about to share my screen, guys.
You gonna tell us who's
Yeah.
at first?
Yeah. Drop your thoughts in the chat for what you guys think with our brackets. We'll do Cam's is probably the least crazy, so we'll do his first.
Okay.
This is like Cam. You know how like usually I tend to like when it comes to betting, I tend to think the worst or think the best. Like it's very one end of the spectrum.
Yep. Hot
My
and cold is what I say.
Yeah. My bracket is there. My bracket is very like This is screw it.
But it's
We're just throwing it
100%
all out
possible.
there.
Y'all see that?
Yep.
Yep.
For sure. So with mine, I think the craziest play I probably have is SMU as the ACC champion, which is I don't know, probably less far fetched now that Miami actually has a loss. I think they showed some vulnerability, and if SMU stays hot the way they've been, I think they got a real shot at securing the ACC championship. So I'm just kind of rooting for them.
I like it.
I kept Georgia. Go ahead.
I got a big question for you. It's not
Okay.
anything to do with Georgia. You have Oregon beating Ohio State 3 times this year.
If it lines up that way, yeah. If it does,
All right.
I
Unless
suppose it'll be
Indiana
beat-
difficult.
That would be insane.
Yeah, because the other thing is it's Indiana's like that small question mark. Like, do they end up securing? Like they could get Big Ten title, and if they win out, lose Big Ten, like, do they stay in? Their strength of schedule is a little lower than others, but so that's one of the other question marks.
Yeah.
But Oregon to me is they have been the most consistent team, like week in and week out. Like if they face an inferior opponent, they do their job. Like they're not getting in like these close games where they have like these off days. And everyone else I feel like has had one of those games. Like SMU lost to BYU, like I guess BYU hasn't had one of those games, but like strength of schedule is going to come into conversation. Everyone I'm looking at has had a day where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, they're vulnerable, except Oregon. And so until I see that, why would I have anyone beating Oregon? They haven't been vulnerable,
Where's Notre Dame?
They're losing to USC
Okay.
on the road. They're
I
losing.
like
They're
that.
Okay.
Notre Dame is a very good home team. They do not travel well historically. They are losing on the road to
Brandon, that's almost as
USC.
crazy as ours.
Yeah. I mean, I could see
I also had Georgia Tech beating Miami.
True.
this is almost like the safer version of ours, whereas I feel like ours are like, nah, screw it. We want the chaos.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now, if Notre Dame wins out, they're probably 7. I would say they're probably 7 or 8, in my opinion.
One thing I know we all have Boise State at 12, like, unless Will has something different. That's kind of obvious, but there's a chance they get a little bit higher than 12 if they win out and convince some people.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's. I
They
think it
could get
depends
a
on
two.
the
They could get
manner
a
of the
2-loss
wins.
team put at 12.
True. They almost beat Oregon.
Or what if Georgia loses a third game somehow? Just throwing this out there, does Georgia get the number 12 spot with 3 losses?
I don't think they get in.
Or no, I'm just saying, like a team
With
like
3
that in
losses,
general.
no, they don't get in. But I don't have Georgia losing another game.
We'll
I
go to
think they-
mine next.
I think they beat Tennessee.
So that lady on the college playoff committee, I cannot remember her name, but she said it would be hard to keep a 3-loss Georgia out of the playoff.
I think it's hard to keep a lot of 3-loss SEC teams out.
True.
This is mine. I do have Georgia losing another game.
Well, this is too safe.
It's not too safe.
I
Georgia's
would argue
favored by
yours
10.
is more I don't know,
have-
realistic, more safe
You
than
have
mine.
Indiana losing to Tennessee.
I know. They're my golden boys.
That's where you go. That's funny.
But I think it's just a bad matchup for them. I think they just slip up. They're still a better team, but you just got to predict the slip ups.
Fair.
And I think they slip up in round 1.
Ole
Hold on
Miss,
now.
Ohio State would be a game.
Yes, it
Who
would.
who is your Big Ten champion?
Ohio State.
Ohio State.
I think it's hard to beat a team twice, but I do think I think Ohio State beats Oregon, but then Oregon's obviously going to be the 5 seed because they're going to be 12-1.
Yeah,
so they'll be
with
the
a good
5.
resume.
And then they won't even get a chance to face them in the playoffs. And so
You
but
got Ole
Oregon-
Miss.
Mhm.
That's
think Ole
valid.
Miss is scary.
No, it's valid. It's valid. They're dangerous. That's a dangerous team. I think that's valid. I think they can make some noise. That defense, if they come to play, they're scary. That's a scary bunch.
And then I think BYU is going to win the Big 12 and going to be the only team to get in because they're going to be
I
the
feel
only
like-
team with 1 loss or 0.
I feel like you had Indiana at like 8 or 9 the previous week, and you got them down at 10 now.
I just think with Georgia losing, I think Tennessee's gonna be in there, and then I don't think I had Alabama in there, and they impressed me this week. So I didn't have Alabama or Ole Miss in there last week, and they both
So-
impressed me.
So you dropped Georgia and
Georgia and
LSU.
LSU.
LSU. That's
Yep.
right.
So yeah, and then basically just have them playing each other in
I
round
like
one
this one.
because I didn't I originally had Alabama in the SC championship, but then when I realized, okay, Tennessee beats Georgia, so they'll be in the SEC championship,
Yep.
and then they'll lose
Man,
to Texas.
Also went SMU ACC champion.
hmm
So
Miami will
you
squeak
hopping
in.
on the bandwagon. Hopping
Miami
on the
will squeak
bandwagon.
in at the very
Welcome
end.
aboard, son.
But I think I think Notre Dame is a solid team, guys. I got them going to the
I
Final
agree.
Four. So, and
I-
they get
Uh,
a fairly easy road. I think they get Miami and SMU. So,
I think they're solid, but they have lost their only real tough matchup this year. Or sorry, they won their one tough matchup. But outside of that, I mean, have they really played great competition?
I mean,
It's a question for
no,
you. Just
not for real. Not for
but I
real.
mean,
That's
A&M week
why
one, that's tough. And I legitimately think like Riley Leonard's finally getting the offense is what makes me believe because he's finally. I thought he was going to be an elite quarterback coming to the year. First half of the year, he was not, but I think he's starting to
Yeah.
finally get the reins of the offense
Yeah.
and get going.
let's go to the next one.
just
I
going
like that one.
chaos.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
interested in these next two. Me and Will tend to be kind of like more
Smart.
conservative with yeah, you could call it that.
I'm thinking
just
about
less risk taking, I think.
I'm thinking about too many situations that can happen in 3 weeks.
We'll go to Nate's here.
I'm guessing Brandon's is just like
You'll see I'm
nonsense.
biased, obviously, with who wins it all. But go ahead and ask the questions.
All right. You have Georgia getting in.
Yes, I have
So
them getting in.
they beat
They
Tennessee.
beat Tennessee.
Yep. Okay.
It's hard to beat a team twice. That's the only reason I got Texas over them.
Colorado. Oh, Colorado.
So let me break down why Miami's not in there real quick. BYU goes undefeated to the Big 12 championship, plays Colorado. I have BYU losing that game. That'd be a one-loss BYU team. Miami has 2 losses, and one of those losses is to a 500 team. So that's why I have BYU in over them. And then who else? Notre Dame. I'll have them in at 1 loss over Miami also.
I can see it going both ways.
Yeah.
It's really that one's going to be like up to the committee, like, and I think it would be between like if this scenario happens.
It should be
Okay,
like
so
this.
So if BYU wins, I think Miami's resume easily beats Colorado's and they get in.
Oh, yeah.
But if
No,
if
yes.
Colorado wins this game and it's between, I think it would be like low key between BYU and Miami, because like these 2-loss SEC teams, they're gonna get some sort of it's not SEC bias, it is strength of schedule, like it's merited, like these guys should get in.
I think in this
Um,
scenario is one of the ones where you could see Boise State at 11, BYU's
Yes.
12.
And BYU at 12,
Yes.
yeah,
That's
I
why
can
I
see
was
that as
asking.
well.
The
I can
one
see
thing
that as well.
The one thing I'll point out about this bracket is, like you said earlier about Milrow, that would be a slate right there. Ole Miss, Penn State, then Ohio State.
I also think if you have Notre Dame winning out, I think they'd be like 9 or 10.
The only reason I
Yeah.
put them at 11 is because of that loss they have is so bad. Because who
And
do I
they
have?
could look at that.
Yeah, and I really do think neutral field, a 2-loss Texas or Georgia can beat Notre Dame. Who do I have at 9? Let me find it.
Who is 9?
You have Texas and Georgia at 9.
Texas.
Or sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, 8,
And then
9.
you got
Yeah, yeah.
Ole Miss at 7.
Ole Miss at 7. BYU at 10.
They have the same record, but basically BYU's
Um,
loss would be better in this.
The only
scenario.
reason I put BYU in front of Notre Dame is because it's a loss in a conference championship.
Yeah.
The biggest thing with me though is I don't know. Miami would be tough. I'm trying to think. What was it? I said something to Will earlier. It was about another team. Oh, so what I basically have it as is that Texas A&M beats Texas, then Texas A&M loses the SEC championship, and then that would get Texas to sneak in.
Really?
Or what was it? Or it was the other way
I
around.
think-
Sorry,
I
it
think
was the
so,
other way
yeah.
around. Yeah,
Yeah.
other way around. Texas beats Texas A&M, and then Bama beats Texas. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've changed my mind on Texas A&M. I've been saying
Every week.
A&M is going to win that game, but more and more I look at it, I think Texas, can go in there and beat them. I ain't going to say
Yeah.
easily, but they can go in there and beat them, especially when Texas A&M is kind of one-dimensional right now.
All
Yeah,
right,
they
do
have some
we-
flaws right now.
Do we go to the madness of Brandon's?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
Nate, I think yours is fine. Like some small, but like it logically, it makes sense.
Yeah, and if you didn't notice, Indiana's not beating Ohio State, and their schedule does not get them in. That's why they're not in there.
I get it. I can see that going either way.
All right, you
All
guys
right.
ready for this shit?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy,
I'm so
Cam.
curious.
Here we go.
Can you click off that ad?
Yeah.
I got it.
Here we go.
Dude, Ole Miss could
Okay.
do that too. Just saying, they could.
Ole Miss is winning the whole thing.
They're winning it all, without a doubt.
Okay.
It's Lane Kiffin's year.
I've got. I
that
don't know
would
where to
be-
start.
He would win
I don't
more
know where
big
to start.
games in a month than he has won his whole career at Ole Miss.
Got to start
Okay.
somewhere.
Miami beats Ohio State.
Yeah. Why not? Why not?
I don't know why not. I don't.
I think Miami can score on Ohio State's defense 100%. I think it'd be more of a shootout than people would think.
The one thing that that I didn't even realize when I was making this with Brandon too is we got Colorado at the 3 seed over Miami at the 4 now. So-
Yeah. Because Colorado's going to win the Big 12.
yeah, but Miami's
But
going to win
Miami
the
win-
ACC in this
yeah.
one.
So
And they'll have one
yeah.
loss.
Yeah, true. Good point. But Colorado's still the better team.
I mean, I guess.
I can honestly see the argument between the two. Like, who's the better team? But at the end of the day, the
Oh.
record, they're going to put Miami in front of Colorado.
Yeah.
Why don't you have Colorado beating Texas?
Well, Texas is just too good.
I don't understand. I thought we were on board with Miami.
Dude.
Or I mean
Got this
Colorado.
coming
I mean-
on from this is
Whose
Brandon's
bracket is this? This is Brandon's.
Dude.
I'm not claiming this.
And then
Lane
we get
Kiffin,
this.
Lane Kiffin versus Alabama in the national championship would be just, it'd be crazy.
Like, it sucks for Indiana because they'll have to match up against Georgia. That sucks. But
Yeah, Georgia wins
mean-
that game.
I really think in this year there's got to be 4 SEC teams that get in. It's just
Yeah.
too good of a conference.
So
I
do you have Indiana losing to Ohio State, I assume, and still getting in?
Yeah,
Okay.
they deserve it.
I mean, they will.
I-
They'll be 11-1.
Will,
Exactly.
you need to make sure you screenshot this because if Ole Miss wins the national championship, like it needs to just go like worldwide that Brandon
would
called
be-
this thing.
Someone's saying, "Okay, where's?"
Look, if
Where's
I had
Too
to
many
put South
losses,
Carolina-
man.
They have
Too
3
many losses.
That's where
We got
they
3
are.
losses.
I could easily put South Carolina where Texas is and be comfortable with that.
Dude, I think South Carolina could pull a first round upset.
South Carolina could smoke Notre Dame. They would go to Boulder. They would smoke Colorado, and then they would struggle. They would struggle against Alabama again. But I could easily see like if the SEC were if South Carolina played in the Big 12, I would have South Carolina at the 3 seed or 2 seed.
I will say this would
Like,
be fun. This would be very
This
fun.
would be fun. You please screenshot this one.
See,
This is fantastic.
This points out how the bracket is still like how the system is still flawed. Because you can't sit here and tell me that South Carolina is a worse team than Boise State,
I can't tell you that.
So
or let
not
alone
true.
or
It's
let
not true.
alone let alone Penn State.
Or Georgia.
So real quick,
Facts.
I've noticed none of us has put this on our bracket, Can Boise State upset Ohio State first round?
Not a
Maybe.
chance.
Or in Oregon?
Not a
Because they
chance.
did almost beat Oregon at the
They
beginning of the
pushed
year.
Oregon to the brink, but
Do you
I
think
also
they
was-
could push Ohio State in a playoff?
Not in a playoff. Not in a
push 'em,
playoff scenario.
Maybe. I think the main reason they also did push Oregon to the brink was because it was a week 2. Dylan Gabriel was still figuring out. That's the one time. The first 2 to 3 weeks
Yeah.
was when Oregon looked beatable, but then since then they've looked like the best team in the country.
I
So,
can tell you how to stop Dylan Gabriel. Shut down the left side of the field.
yes, but that's also ridiculously hard to do against Oregon. It
Yeah.
just spreads you out.
See, tell me
I just want to see
how-
an upset. I want to see a big upset.
We'll get
tell
one.
me tell me the scenario where Ole Miss doesn't get in and doesn't make a run.
They lose Mississippi State.
They're not gonna.
Not gonna
no,
happen.
They're gonna get in.
That's what I'm saying. That's the only way they don't.
It's really depends on their matchup. Like I think they beat Penn State, but like in mine, I had them playing Alabama
Dude.
in round 1, which would be a tough matchup for them. I did have them winning because it's Ole Miss. They're the best team in the country. But
Okay.
Dude, that's an
I
awful
think-
matchup for Penn State. I mean, just the
think-
worst it can get.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Like in my bracket here, I mean, I have them beating Alabama, but if they play anybody but Alabama round 1, I would put Ole Miss ahead of anybody else. Maybe Oregon, but I still have them beating Oregon here.
That'd be a fun game.
Yeah, and if they keep that kind of momentum that they had this past weekend, they're going to be hot at the right time. No one's going to want to play them.
So, out of curiosity, and this is just hypothetical, Oregon's doing what they're doing, right? But their strength of schedule is not the best. Actually, it's
Right.
not that great at all. Do you think they're that good, or their schedule's that weak? And you can say the same for Ohio State because it was a close game.
I think they're that good.
No, I
Like,
think they're very good
metrics,
too.
The metrics are there, and they're not. It's not like they're battling. You know, they've had a couple of close games, maybe, but
still
for the
think
most part, it's
if
just
you
the
put-
execution is there.
If you put them in the SEC with Ohio State, they're both going to be 10-2, 9-3 teams.
Well, I think, and that's what I agree with that wholeheartedly. Just because I think the SEC is a more difficult conference to play in. I just think that's what happens. Like they're just
Yeah.
going to beat up on each other.
They're not going to be as beat
Um,
up at the end of the year as we are.
repeat the question again.
Yeah.
Really good point. Really good point from the chat. So South Carolina has 3 games left. It's Missouri, I think Wofford, and then Clemson. Missouri will be ranked. Clemson's going to be ranked. If they go win out, now we're talking about their strength of schedule is going to be better.
They're
I could
9 and
actually see
3.
a road where they get in.
Who do they get in over?
Other teams
'Cause
have to lose.
They
Other
can't
they
get in
don't
over
control their
Georgia.
destiny. Yeah,
They
they don't
ca-
control their
They
destiny.
can't get in over Bama. They can't get in over Ole Miss. I don't
They can
think.
get in over Georgia if Georgia loses to Tennessee.
There's a world. Like
Did
there's
Georgia-
a world.
Did Georgia beat South Carolina this year?
They didn't
didn't
play.
play.
They didn't play.
But what if
Well,
what
then-
if Texas loses Texas A&M, and then say who would that put in the SEC championship?
That'd be
Alabama versus
A&M
be
and
Alabama and-
Tennessee.
A&M, or
And
yeah,
if like in this scenario, it'd be A&M Tennessee because Tennessee would have beat Georgia and A&M would have beat Texas.
If Georgia beats Tennessee, it'd be Alabama in the winner of the Texas game.
You'd need another team to slip up, like against a non-team that's not
that's what I'm
threatening
saying.
for a
They
playoff.
don't
Like,
control their destiny.
So
Like you-
what? Go ahead.
You'd need like Notre Dame would have to lose to USC or Army. Indiana has to slip
they
up
will.
against someone not named Ohio State. Georgia loses to Georgia Tech. Shoot, they just beat Miami. You never know. Like it.
See, this
you
is
need
all on
teams
the
to
refs.
slip up.
This is completely on the refs against South Carolina and LSU. Because South Carolina should have won that game. They're the better team, and the refs screwed them
Yeah.
out of it.
Yeah, they
So I
could be
remember that, 'cause that was-
7-2.
That was my plus money play, and I was heated. I'm still heated about that game.
I'm gonna bring this up while we got the bracket up. I actually saw it earlier. If Bama, assuming Georgia beats Tennessee and Bama wins out, if Bama gets to the SEC championship and loses, does a 3-loss SEC championship loser get in?
It really just depends on everything else that's going on in the college football world. Like if
Yeah.
I don't think it's out of
That-
the question.
That depends on the committee because if the winner of the conference championship gets a bye, it's got to mean something for the team that gets to the conference championship as well.
I mean, yeah,
Like Bama
And
loses
like
a
that-
close game to Texas, does Bama get left out?
That loss shouldn't, hurt a team because it's the championship game of your conference. That shouldn't
Yep.
hurt you as much as like say losing to an unranked team earlier in the season.
Yeah. But like
If
I got
I'm-
And
my
they have said as much. They've said that like they're going to try not to punish losers of conference championship games. They have
Like-
said that.
I got SMU being Miami and then Colorado being BYU, but I have Miami sitting at home.
Right.
If,
You know.
One more thing from chat says opinions on the possible doomsday scenario with the potential 8-way tie in the SEC.
Will, you go ahead on that one.
Yeah.
it'd be crazy. I mean, there's literally a chance where LSU somehow still wins the SEC, and basically the SEC gets left out completely, which would not probably happen because they have LSU winning the SEC, and they didn't say it's the conference winners of each Power 4 conference. It's the highest 4 rated conference winners. Boise State's going to be a conference winner in this scenario, and they had them at 4, which would be
If LSU
ridiculous.
also wins,
Yes.
that's wild.
So how
Which
does
is crazy.
LSU make it to the
I
SEC
mean, it
championship?
would take basically every team to lose out except like a Tennessee or like basically like Tennessee would have to beat Georgia, and then it basically be LSU facing Tennessee in the championship, and then LSU wins.
And then Alabama would have to lose to Oklahoma or Auburn, I would assume.
Yes, it's basically like like all the teams that are ahead of them right now has to lose a game that they're not going to lose.
Well, that would be awesome.
Yes, but it's just not going to happen.
Then we just have the normal college football playoff over here, and then we just separate all the SEC, and we have an SEC playoff over here.
South
Just run
Carolina
it
wins
back.
it all.
And
South Carolina wins it all. Who said 9 out of 10 bracket? That's funny.
W.
All right. We kind of talked about some SEC stuff too. We're at almost an hour and a half. Let's go week 12 preview.
Let's do it.
And fly through that. We'll go our games of the week. Brandon, you got those written down?
Yes.
Let's intro
Games
the
of the
games of the week.
We will start off with the one that me personally not as excited to watch. Just in the grand scheme of the games of the week that we have, it is Kansas State versus Arizona State. Kansas State is the 8.5-point favorite. The over/under in that game is 50.5.
Yep.
So we'll get to see a little. I think both teams are still 7-2 as well. So we'll get to see. Somebody's got to come out on top, and we will see who gets closer to that Big 12 championship game. Moving on to more SEC talk. We will go with UGA versus Tennessee first. Have mixed feelings about this game, have mixed feelings about the numbers that Vegas has put on it. UGA is a 10-point favorite. The over-under is 48.5. I don't know about the 10-point favorite nonsense, but I think 48.5 is a good number. This game is at Georgia in Athens. Georgia's doing a blackout. Nobody ever knows when they do a blackout if they're going to come out with their black jerseys or not. I highly doubt it. Would be sick if they did come out with the black jerseys, but I think their track record in the black jerseys is really bad. Plus, as a Georgia fan, we need as little distractions as possible. I think black jerseys would add another distraction, and we would end up getting pummeled into the ground once again. So, last game of the week, another SEC matchup, which I already know what I'm going to take. I love the lines. I love it. South Carolina versus Missouri. Just got done talking about South Carolina. They are a 13.5-point favorite. Love that. And the over-under is 43.5. I think it's a little low, but we'll see how the weekend unfolds. But I mean, this is almost like, I think these being our games of the week means it's almost like a little sleeper for college football this week. We do have the Georgia versus Tennessee, which is huge. I'm gonna love watching South Carolina play. Hopefully they can point out just how fraudulent I think Missouri is. And then we get a little bit of Big 12 matchup in Kansas State, Arizona State.
We'll start with Arizona State at Kansas State. And then I want to do Missouri and South Carolina next. We'll end it with Tennessee at Georgia. So let's go the Big 12 matchup first. Nate, Big 12 man, let's start
Yeah.
us off.
Yeah, so believe it or not, both these teams are still in the hunt for the Big 12 championship. So it's
Low
going to
key,
be,
yeah.
it's going to have a lot on the line for the game. I'll kind of say this or predict this game kind of like I did some of the Colorado games. I think it's going to be a defensive game for Arizona State, especially. Avery Johnson really struggles throwing the ball under pressure. We've seen that all year. I think if Arizona State can put really good pressure and put some blitz packages in there, he will struggle getting the ball downfield. I don't think Kansas State will beat Arizona State with the run game. That's just an opinion. Y'all might have something different. To the other side of the ball, Kansas State does not defend the pass very well. And then on top of that, Arizona State has a really strong run game. So I think they're going to mix it up a little bit. I think they're going to establish the ground game, and then they're going to throw it through the air a little bit. How do you say his name? Will is it Skatebo? Skatebo?
Scatabo.
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 He's only got 4 picks on the year, so he's very good with the ball, making good decisions. So I think at the end of the day, Arizona State's just going to get a few more stops than Kansas State. So I'm not saying who's going to win this game necessarily, but I am going to take Arizona State +8, and they could potentially win it outright.
All right. So here's the issue for Arizona State. So Kansas State lost their last game, right? Versus
Yeah.
Houston. They had no issues moving the ball at all. No issues. The problem was in the red zone. Houston did a great job of getting red zone stops, and ultimately that was the reason they lost that game. Arizona State is ranked 117th in red zone defense. Okay, so we're assuming Kansas State is going to continue to be able to move the ball very well, and now they're facing a team who is going to struggle in the red zone. They should be able to punch it in, score some points. Kansas State also coming off a bye. I love rest advantage. Y'all know how I feel about that, especially for a team that had a loss right before the bye. A lot of good time to tinker with some things and make some adjustments. On my flip side, Scatabo is back for Arizona State. I was going through all the posts and stuff, and he is expected to play. So a healthy, rested Scatabo is going to be a difference maker for Arizona State. I do not think it is enough for Arizona State to win the game, but I think it is enough for them to score enough points while losing, and then Kansas State will score enough points to get the over 50. So I'm not going to take money line. I really didn't like 8.5. I actually think it might be fairly competitive. I don't entirely trust an Arizona State cover. But I do think they're both going to be able to score enough points to be able to eclipse the 50 mark. So over 50 is my play.
I like that one. I looked at it as well. But what I have is Arizona State +8 because I think they'll be able to run the ball well. And Kansas State, as a 7 or more favorite, they're 1-7 in their last 8.
I
Against
love
the spread.
against the spread stuff. Great job, Will.
And
Yeah.
this year, Arizona State is 7-2 against the spread. Good teams
Wow.
win.
Almost choked on my drink.
Good teams win, but great teams cover. That's a saying that my friend Ethan likes to say. So I think
factual
Arizona
statement.
State will cover +8.
I thought about the cover, and now that you said that, it's like, and I was like kind of leaning towards it, especially with Scatabo coming
Yeah.
back.
I mean,
I
we're
think
just,
Arizona State can win the game.
yeah, we're just banking
I like
on
your play. I
we're
like
just
your
banking
plays.
on they put pressure on Avery Johnson.
I think they'll be able to. No, I'm with you guys, Brandon.
Will made some great points. I think I'm going to ride that same thing. Every time I think about Kansas State, my mind just goes back to that night when we watched Kansas State play BYU, and they just looked like an awful football team, like from top to bottom. So, with Scatabo being back, like you guys said, gives them a little life. I think if they can get some pressure, I mean, 8.5 with the hook right there. I mean, I would even buy it down to 7.5. So I like the cover. I like the cover from Arizona State. I'm riding with that. I think it's the smart play, and I mean, Arizona State money line not out of the question either here.
It's good value.
All right. Yep. So, well, I'm in last, so I'm glad I have something different because I'm gonna need moments like this. So now I'm a avid Kansas State fan. I just need them to score enough points. Let's move on to Missouri and South Carolina. I am gonna start on this one because I have been talking about Missouri for as long as I can remember us doing this podcast. Um, riddle me this, fellas. Okay. Missouri and South Carolina are separated 21-23 by two rankings in the AP poll. Tell me why on earth South Carolina is favored by almost 2 touchdowns. If they're this close in the rankings, why
Thank
are
you.
they favored by 2 touchdowns? You want to know the answer?
Because Missouri's bad.
Because Missouri is a fraudulent organization.
Very fraudulent.
This line this line makes sense. The AP poll doesn't make sense. I frown upon the AP poll. They do not know what they're doing over there. Missouri is in my top 50 maybe. They are not equipped to handle a team like this. I looked at no stats. I looked at no data. I don't care. Whatever, Brandon, what's the last line you got? I don't care what it is.
13 and a half.
Minus 13.5. South Carolina covers. Buy it up to minus 17 if you want. This is not
20.
going to be a close game. Whatever you want to do. It's not going to be close.
I'm on
Go
the
ahead.
same page. It's a minus 13 and a half all day. I don't care if Brady Cook is back and he's 100% healthy. He could be 120% healthy. The South
Yep. I don't care
Carolina
if he's got
team,
3 hands now. I don't care.
no, this South Carolina team is better not only on the ground game with Rocket Sanders. Shout out, he's been dog of the week. I think twice, maybe 3
Yep.
times.
2
But
times.
Sellers, like I said, Sellers is the closest thing to a Jalen Milrow that we've seen this far. He is explosive with his legs. We saw that in the Texas A&M game. They couldn't stop him, and he can throw the ball pretty well too. They got some weapons around him. Not to mention their defense, very, very talented. I think it might be a true freshman already asking for $2 million for him to stay around South Carolina. So they know their value because they're really, really good and they could shut teams down in a hurry. Missouri has no weapons that are going to expose South Carolina in any way. They're the better team in every aspect of football. Give me South Carolina minus 13 and a half. They're going to win by 3 touchdowns. 13 and a half is an easy line for this game.
I got the same exact thing. South Carolina's going to win this football game pretty handily. I mean, Sellers is dynamic with his legs. He can throw it, not accurately, but he can throw it.
Can do the motion.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Missouri. I mean, the only way they keep this game close is if Luther Burden has 15 catches. And I just don't think that's going to happen because Brady Cook's not only not going to have time to throw, I think they take Luther Burden out of the game.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
I legit think this game is going to be like 35-13.
I love that.
Yep.
So at first I was looking at the over under, wasn't sure, but I just did see not too long ago that Brady Cook is listed as doubtful for the game. I never thought Mizzou was going to win, and I know some of y'all don't think Brady Cook playing matters or not, but that did make my decision turn to give me South Carolina minus 14 for plus money.
I had
Oh,
a
yeah.
feeling we would be if you know ball, if you watch the tape, we're going to have the same opinions on this matter. Anyone who's watched Missouri,
0-4 on that one.
whatever. I need it for the narrative. I've had the same narrative about Missouri for the last 6 weeks, so I need it to happen for my sanity. Let's spend a little time on. We got 20 minutes. Let's spend a little bit of time on Tennessee at Georgia. Brandon, go ahead and start us off.
All right. So this line works out perfect for me to bet like a fan and a sports bettor all at the same time. Okay. So it's UGA minus 10, right? That's pretty high, I would say. Like that's a lot of points that for a team coming off a really bad loss and a Tennessee team who's been trending in the right direction. I think I saw where their defense is ranked, I think one of the top 5 in efficiency, and their run game is up there top 5 as well. It's elite. So the only thing that I think hinders Tennessee's ability to be a really good football team is the atmosphere in Athens on Saturday. But like I was saying, the line at -10, I'm going to take Tennessee plus 10 because if they win the game or they keep it close, I win money. If Georgia loses the game, that sucks, but I won money because
Yep.
I made Tennessee -10. If Georgia somehow wins by 25 points, okay, I might have lost some money, but Georgia just beat a ranked team by 25 points.
And probably secured their playoff berth.
Exactly. So for me personally, as a Georgia fan, it's a win-win. I don't lose here in any situation. Now, for podcast sake, I think Tennessee plus 10 is even more of the smarter bet if I take all the fan bias out of it. Because like I was saying before, I mean, Carson Beck, mid quarterback. They got the most drops in college football as a receiving core. Their offensive line has struggled. Can't run block, can't pass block, can't do much. Their defense is on the field way too much, especially against a team who is always explosive offensively every year. I mean, you saw what they did against Alabama. I mean, they ran the ball, they threw the ball, they made some explosive plays. I think, and we go back to who needs this game more. I think it's even in this situation. I mean, both teams are fighting for their chance to continue to play after, in December and in January. So I think both teams, this game is really, really high on their list. And I don't think at the beginning of the season, Georgia would have had it that high ranked. But Tennessee has had this game circled for a long time before the season even started. So we're going to see some fireworks in this game for sure. What I would like to see for Georgia to on the flip side of my fan bias here, where Georgia wins by more than 2 touchdowns, is Carson Beck's got to have a great game. He's got to play his butt off. The offensive line has got to give him some time. Receivers got to catch the football. And honestly, the defense just has to play like they've been playing. I mean, like Nate said against Ole Miss, I mean, they played well for the situations that they were in. I mean, when you have multiple turnovers on your own side of the 50-yard line, you're going to give up field goals. So if we can limit turnovers and just let the defense do their thing and keep them out of plus territory, I think UGA somehow squeaks out of this game handedly. But at the same time, I don't know if I can go, anything other than Tennessee plus 10 here.
I'm going to go last.
I got the same thing. It's such a high spread. Like, this is a top 10 team going into Sanford. I think it's a tough place to play, but plus 10 is ridiculous. I mean, Nico is questionable, which doesn't help, but I think even then, like, the Tennessee run game's pretty good. Georgia's kind of reeling a little bit. They are playing for their season, but still, I think freaking 10 is ridiculous for a top 10 team. Like, if you'd have told me a top 10 team is like plus 10 at -110 value, I'm taking it every time. I don't care.
When I was looking this game up, I was sure it was going to be like UGA -2.5, and it was going to be a struggle to make a pick in this one.
Yeah, I got Tennessee plus 10 easily.
Nate?
Yeah, I'm taking Tennessee plus 10 also. I do think Georgia wins this game. I think it's going to be very low scoring. Tennessee this year has not allowed more than 19 points in a football game. So I think this could kind of be, hopefully not, but I think it's going to sort of be like the Georgia-Kentucky game. A lot of defensive stops, some field goals here and there. The way I would look at this is Tennessee's a better defense than Ole Miss. Nowhere near as explosive on the offensive side of the ball, at least from what we've seen. They just score enough to get by. So I think it's going to be very low scoring. So I think Georgia holds on just by a little bit, but Tennessee's going to cover.
All right, guys.
God.
There's a reason. There's a reason I wanted to go last.
Go ahead.
I am obviously I'm worried, but I'm going to trust myself. Georgia tends to come back and play well after losses. Kirby Smart is a master motivator. They are at home. I've been kind of down on Tennessee the entire season. I don't think their strength of schedule is not that great. I think they have some flaws. And I think a motivated Georgia team is 2 touchdowns better than Tennessee. So I'm going Georgia comes out motivated and they make a statement because their season's on the line and they win by at least 10 points. Georgia minus 10.
I just
Another
think they can get it
opportunity.
back.
So Tennessee only has one other ranked game on their schedule as of now, and it was a win against Alabama. So this is going to be their one of their
A wounded Alabama. A wounded Alabama.
Yeah. What I'm saying is this is going to be a test for them that they've not really seen this year.
I just think you can
Yeah,
get that value better eventually because the only reason it's so high is because Nico's questionable. If you wait closer to game time, I think it'll be close. Like once if he's ruled like that he's playing, I think you can get it lower than like closer to 7.
Well, yeah, that sounds great, but we don't have that luxury, do we, boys? Because we have to make picks today.
I'm telling the viewers, wait
So-
on that.
So
Wait for it to go down once he's ruled he's playing.
so Cam's predicting
Yeah.
a blowout.
Well, if you're predicting Tennessee, then take it now.
Oh
it
yeah,
minus
take it now.
10,
Take it
or
now.
take
The
it
value is
plus
great.
10.
Or take
I need to win. I need to catch up to the fellas here. So this is a perfect opportunity for me
It's
to take a
unfortunate
chance.
that you're
So-
gonna go down one on the fellas here.
Do
You
you
said
see this?
that about KSU and UTEP and your boy.
Do you see this
made
being a
some money
higher
on that
scoring?
one.
Two
Do you see it?
completely different teams right here.
Is this going to be a
Yeah,
higher
one's
scoring game in
better
your
than
opinion?
the other. What?
Is this going to be a higher scoring game in your opinion?
I think it'll be right at the line. I think it'll be right at the line. Was it like 48.5, 50?
Which is crazy because, like I said,
It'll be right
Tennessee's
around
not
there.
giving up more than 19 all year, and that was
48 and a half is the line. I think
to
that's
Arkansas.
close to 50. I see it being like a 20-17, something like 21-17 at the highest.
Georgia rarely scores less than 30 points in a football game. It's only happened twice.
Unless it's against Kentucky, they always.
Yeah. It's risky, but there's a world, especially with how they lost this last. They're going to be motivated,
Which,
and
I'll
which
tell you
is why I think they're going to win the game.
Brandon
They just got to win by a decent amount.
Brandon just predicted this score real quick. I want to run through their last few games except Mississippi State. 28-18 against Kentucky, 24-17 Bama, 23-17 Florida, 25-15 Oklahoma. The only game they lost was 19-14 against Arkansas. So all their games are within that margin that Brandon just said, roughly.
Yeah. Toilet
It's
bowl?
going to be interesting. Toilet Bowl.
Let's do it.
Florida Atlantic at Temple. It's hard to say. It's hard to say out loud. Temple, so in case you guys haven't looked, Temple is favored by -2.5 last time I checked. Don't know if the line's changed or not. Over and under is at 50.5. What do we have for predictions, fellas?
I got 2 words for you. Fire works. Over 50.5.
Count me in on that. 50.5 over.
Nate,
Brandon follows me every time on Toilet Bowl.
So
yeah, he does.
y'all
I
know
think
He
there's
doesn't
a- I
look.
think
He
there's-
doesn't look.
There's a trend here, I think, with every toilet bowl, it's been like a high scoring
Yeah,
event.
it'll be in shootouts.
Like there's no defense that goes on with these games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So y'all know I used to cover Temple in the AAC.
They're like the
Yes,
worst
you
team
did.
ever.
They are bad. Like up
They
and down
are
the
bad. I remember
up
those
and down
times.
the up and down the board. FAU just has better athletes. Not saying they're a good team, but Temple's bad, guys. So I'm taking Florida Atlantic. Weirdly, they're plus money in this game, so I'm taking them to win outright.
Yep.
Mm.
So Temple has given up over 50 points in their past 2 games. So naturally, I'm going to have the Temple money line this Saturday. Temple is going to win the football game. I went off the rails with the last one, and it worked out. So we're just gonna keep riding that train.
Fireworks.
Let's go individual plays. We'll start with Nate and the Big 12. What do you have for this weekend?
Yeah, let me pull up my handy notes real quick. So
We got to go fairly quick too, fellas.
yeah, gotcha. So I'm gonna go Colorado versus Utah. I'm gonna go over 46.5. I think Colorado could, if their offense does what it can do, score just about all that by themselves in this game. Utah's defense is not that good to me. I think Colorado is it's gonna be like a 35-12 ball game, something around that. So I think I'm gonna take the over in that. This next one is, I can't believe I'm doing it, but I still think BYU's that much better than Kansas. I'm taking BYU -3 at home versus Kansas. I think it's going to be a bounce back game, and I think Kansas is just on a little high right now, but BYU's got to play their butt off if they want a chance to win or go to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I'm taking them -3. Plus money
Good
play.
line, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Good line.
Or actually, it's down to 2.5 now. Sorry. So
That's good.
yeah. I almost did a plus money play with Baylor in a football game, and I know I told y'all last week I would never do that, so I changed it. Iowa State's fallen off just a little bit, not playing as well as they were earlier. Cincinnati still has a pretty good offense. They usually start off games pretty well. A lot of their halftime scores are close. So for plus 105, I'm taking Cincinnati +4 in the first half.
I like that.
Okay.
Will, Big 10?
All right, my lock of the week. Ohio State versus Northwestern over 43.5. It's a low number. This game is being played at Wrigley Field. Wind's going to be blowing out the left. Baseball is going to fly out of the yard, so the over's going.
Yeah.
It's at Wrigley, so yeah, over 43.5. I think Ohio State can score 44 themselves. Next one, plus money. I have Penn State, the spread. So this one, it's at 28.5. Bovada doesn't have alternate lines in there, but 28.5 was -105. So I assume 29 will be at plus money.
Probably.
So I'm going Penn State -29 versus Purdue. They just got blown out 38-0 against Ohio State.
They don't score points.
Yeah, I got 45-3.
Yeah, that's about right.
Oregon -13.5 versus Wisconsin. Wisconsin's been trending up. That's why the only reason this line is that low. I legitimately think Oregon's going to blow them out by 25 plus. I don't know why it's so low. Why is this line 2 touchdowns? So yeah, Oregon -13.5 versus Wisconsin.
Nice. All right, let's go ACC. You'll see a theme for the first two. Syracuse at Cal. Stoked with the brand of football that Cal's been playing the last couple weeks, and Syracuse just gave up 400 yards on the ground in a singular game, just one game. Also have to travel to the West Coast, which hasn't been friendly for any team that's had to do that so far. Cal generally starts out quick, and Syracuse takes a full half to really get going. The line's pretty low, so I'm going to take Cal -3 in the first half. Lock of the week, Boston College at SMU. I have absolute domination from SMU written down for this entire game. All phases, they're going to be the better team. I would worry about SMU rotating players in the second half later in the game because it's going to be a blowout. So I'm going to keep it at first half again. SMU -7 in the first half.
Didn't Castellanos get benched?
Yeah, and he's entering the transfer portal.
Yes.
So he's basically quit on his team, dude.
Yeah.
He shut that thing down. So they're a mess. So yeah, I have SMU winning this one pretty easily. Boston College isn't in a good place right now. Last one, this is my plus money play. The last one was my lock of the week, in case I didn't say that. Plus money play, Wake Forest at North Carolina. North Carolina should win this game. They've been playing well, but Wake tends to play really close games on the road. They've been doing it all season. And the line is like -11, I believe. No, it was -10.5. So I'm going to buy it down a touch. Or actually, no, it was -11. So I'm going to go, or +11. So I'm going to go Wake +10. They rarely lose by more than 7. And so I'm only buying it down a point. And I think it was +105. So Wake +10 in what should be a competitive game between the two. Brandon, SEC.
Yeah, we're going to start it off with LSU versus Florida. I'm actually going to go with an under 54.5. I think the spread was a little too big to take for LSU. Um, but I see this game sort of going the same as the Texas versus Florida game in a sense where LSU is probably going to dominate just because the lack of quarterback play from Florida. They're going to have trouble moving the ball, so I don't see Florida scoring a lot of points. Whereas I don't see LSU's offense being as explosive as Texas. So I think, final score is going to be somewhere along the lines of, let's say, like 30-10. So
DJ is
somewhere around there.
questionable. He's questionable.
Questionable. So we'll see. I still
Could
think
be
even
limited,
if he
though.
plays,
Yeah.
right. Even if he plays, I don't think his run game will be fine because it was
Exactly.
like a hamstring related injury. So he'll be forced to throw the ball around a lot. Which I just think if you take away his run game, it's harder for them to move the ball. Still a good thrower, passer, but I just think they'll be less explosive. I think 54.5 is high either way. So we're going to go under that. We're going to move on to Texas versus Arkansas. Texas trending back up ever since they lost to Georgia. This is another game they're going to win big. I have Texas covering at 13.5. I like it there because I think it's an easily winnable game by 2 touchdowns for Texas. And I've been high on Arkansas's offense, but I just think at this point in the season they're slowly starting to kind of give up. They're not as explosive as they've been. They don't have a single chance in making any run at playoffs or anything like that. And Texas, on the other hand, they do need to win these games that they have left very, very handedly to really prove their point. If worst case scenario comes into play and they lose Texas A&M, and or say they lose an SEC championship game, so I predict them to like air it out, normal Texas offense, and their defense is going to be better than anything Arkansas has ever seen. So I think they handle Taylon Green's running ability really well. They're going to force him to throw it a lot, which he is not great at, unless he plays a really bad defensive team. And let's just be honest, Texas is a lot better than Arkansas. I was expecting this line to be at like 21. So made it a little easy for me. The last pick here is another one of those where I have to have 3 picks for the SEC, and there was only like 6 games, and 2 of them were games of the week. So we're going to go with a little Auburn versus UL Monroe. The line for the over-under is 46.5. And I think we're going to go over that because I think Auburn's defense is not good, but I think they are going to run up the score a little bit. And I even predict UL Monroe to score maybe a touchdown to help out for that over. So I see like a 55-7 kind of game. So we'll see what happens. I'm not big on Auburn at all. They're really bad, but UL Monroe, in the grand scheme of things against SEC team, is also really, really, really bad. So over 46.5 for that one. We'll see if we can continue our hot streak that we've been on.
Keep the train rolling. All right, Brandon, real quick, tell the people what they need to do, and then we're going to outro this thing in less than a minute.
Yes, so we have found new avenues here. As you can see, we are live on Twitch. We are live on YouTube. You guys that have been with us in the chat, make sure you guys are hitting the follow button. Make sure you guys are hitting the subscribe button. Hopefully we can get kind of a gauge on how many followers and subscribers we're at so we can set some kind of goals and just maybe have a little shout out, a little celebration when we hit those goals, and we can set newer goals as far as subscribers and stuff like that. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram page and on any of the Twitch and the YouTube and all that. Make sure you ring the bell so you guys get notifications when we go live like we did tonight. We'll probably do this live a lot more often. If you're not able to catch the live, we'll still be uploading our whole videos on the Twitch, on the YouTube, and Spotify for audios like that and stuff. So if it's too late for you guys, listen to us on your way to work tomorrow, whatever you're doing, so you can get some good information for this upcoming weekend in college football and all of our playoff predictions this far.
All right, fellas, that is going to do it for another episode. Definitely tune in on Friday. Me and Will are going to rant about how the NFL went with some of our plays. That will be entertaining for sure. Otherwise, the 4 of us are going to be back next week. I think we're going to do it on Tuesday because Nate's got to go out of town. So expect us on Tuesday. Home stretch, fellas. It's going to get chaotic.
Where are you going?
Italy.
I'm going more than out of
Italy.
town.
He's going to Italy.
Going to
But it's-
Italy,
it's technically out of
Switzerland.
town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have college football over there?
So Fubo also cannot be streamed over there, which is who I use. So I got to figure out a way to watch.
Oh, you're cooked.
Yeah,
All right,
thanks
y'all.
everyone for the participation in the chat. Really, I enjoyed this. I think we should do it more often.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
See y'all.
Peace.
Deuces.